In this lesson, we will learn how to set our animation preferences from 3ds Max's time configuration panel. Now, before setting any keyframes, we need to take a look at this time configuration panel because this is where we'd set our frame rate and any other animation preferences we'd like to use so we can work comfortably inside of 3ds Max. Let's go ahead and take a look at the time configuration panel. So we have a few ways of accessing it. We can head over to our playback controls at the bottom right-hand corner of Max, and to the right of our current time field, we'll find our time configuration panel. When we left-click on that, we'll open up that property page. Or another way, if we were to go ahead and close this out, is to actually right-click on our key mode toggle button to the left of our current time field. So if we were to go ahead and right-click, we get to the same dialog. Alright, so here's where we can set our frame rate. At the top, we can use film 24 frames per second or NTSC 29.97 for games. If you're working in TV, you can go ahead and work with PAL 25 frames per second or choose our own custom frame rate if we'd like. Now keep in mind that when we switch through these, if we already have animation, that can be problematic because our animation has been timed to one of these frame rates. So let me go ahead and show you this. I'll go ahead and switch this back to film and hit OK. Let's head over to Manage Layers. I actually have this docked on the shelf. Another way to access this is to just go ahead and head over to Tools, Manage Layers. And then from there, you can go ahead and just have that docked on your shelf. I'll just go ahead and show you that. If I were to go ahead and left click and drag, this is what you'll be given. And then you could simply just go ahead and take your layer manager and just drag that to the top. So that's just FYI. If you haven't done that already, I'd highly recommend you do so because it's very convenient, very great way to access our layers. But heading back over to the layer manager, what I'll do is go ahead and show the IK net controls. So I'll go ahead and unhide that layer and grab the character's head control. So right now you can see that all of our keys, that's what these marks are on the track bar here, all of them right now are on a whole frame. They don't exist on subframes or moments in between frames. Now, we run the risk of shifting these keys in between frames when we change our frame rate. Let's go ahead and take a look. We'll go back to our time configuration panel, go ahead and right click on the key mode toggle button, and we'll go ahead and switch this to NTSC and take a look. Now you can see how the animation has changed slightly. It's not a drastic change, of course, but it really depends on how much you've animated, but still you can see that our keys right now are off the frames that they were normally on. So instead of being on 26, for example, we're in a moment between 26 and 27. So that can be a bit difficult to work with, of course. So because of that, it's a good idea to go ahead and change your frame rate to the frame rate you need before you begin setting any keyframes so you don't have to worry about this. Now thankfully, I'll be able to go ahead and switch this back to 24 frames per second by going back to the frame rate the animation was created in. So I'll choose Film and click OK, and we're good to go. Alright, sweet. Now heading back over to the time configuration panel, over to our right we can go ahead and choose our time display. So what would we like to display right here in the track bar? Frames? Or if you're familiar with the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineering setting, you can go ahead and work with that. And then we have frame and ticks, and then minutes, seconds, and ticks. So you can see how the track bar changes as we choose any one of these. I tend to stick with frames, but if you find that any one of these are more convenient for you, go ahead and set these. And you can see how everything else changes according to what you have set here on your time display. Alright, fantastic. And then we can go ahead and choose to play back in real time using this option here. We can go ahead and play back from the active viewport only. What does that mean? Well, let's go ahead and turn that off. I'll click OK. And now what we'll do is go ahead and press Alt-W so we can access all 4 of our panels. Alright, sweet. So from here, if I were to go ahead and grab the creature's head control, I'll go ahead and just press the Z key. On every other view where we do not see the creature, I'll hold down Control-Alt and drag with the middle mouse button back so we can go ahead and zoom out a bit, just so we can see what happens. Now let's go ahead and hit play. Take a look, we can see the animation play through in all 4 views. Now why wouldn't we want to do that, right? Because chances are we want to take a look at our animations from every angle to make sure that they look natural. Now, keep in mind that if we are dealing with a very dense scene, meaning that we have a lot going on, well, we might notice a bit of a lag inside of 3ds Max when we use that option. So if you do not like this, you can always go ahead and switch this back to active viewport only. So now whatever viewport we have highlighted, that's the viewport we'll view the animation from. So here's the left view. Take a look. Once we stop the animation, everything else updates afterwards. So if I were to go ahead and play back from, let's say, the perspective view again, you won't see animation anywhere else until we go to a different viewport and activate the view. And then once we stop, of course, the animation will update. So that's basically how that works. And then we can choose to loop our animation if we'd like. If we do not turn on looping and click OK, once we get to the end of the animation, right here at the end of our active time segment, which is frame 72, you'll notice that the animation will not loop back from the start frame. It'll just go ahead and stop. So we'll just have to hit play again to play through the animation. So that's basically what looping does. I really enjoy looping because it's just a great way to feel the animation. Whether you're blocking or working on your polishing pass, it's just a great way to kind of feel what's happening in the animation right now to see if everything is looking right. All right, so we can go ahead and make sure looping is on. All right, sweet. And then we can choose our speed here. So according to our frame rate, we could say, hey, I'd like to play back half the speed. So we can go ahead and set it to half our frame rate. And now when we click OK, I'll go ahead and zoom in to the perspective view, just pressing Alt-W. And we'll go ahead and hit play. You can see now the animation, it plays back slowly. This is a great tool because we can go ahead and see how our work is looking at a slower rate, just to look for any hops or skips that we might want to clean up. So I find that to be very helpful as well. All right, sweet. Now jumping back, you can see that we can also choose our direction here. So when we turn off real time, now we get to choose what direction we play the animation in, whether it be forward. Of course, we know what that means. Reverse, we can play it in reverse, and that's actually a cool thing because we can go ahead and actually study the quality of our animation this way. A good rule to keep in mind is if the animation looks good in reverse, chances are it'll look good forward. So we have that option. We can go ahead and take a look at ping pong, which is going to play it forward and then play it in reverse once we get to the end. So when we go ahead and click play here, you see that once we get to the end, it's going to play it in reverse. And then once we get back to the beginning, it plays it forward. Again, a great way to study your work. But chances are you'll want to keep it on real time as you start to get further along in your animation. Then once you're ready to kind of test things out, you might switch to reverse and ping pong. If anything, they're just fun to look at. We can go ahead and adjust our time segment in the animation section here. So right now, I know that my start time is frame 0, my end is 72, and then I have a frame count of 73. So that's how many frames we have in our active time segment. My current time, how do we know what that is? Well, we can go to the current time field here and figure that out. All right, fantastic. Of course, another way of doing this is to use the current time field here. So if I were to go ahead and click on OK, let's say if we wanted to get to frame 25, instead of scrubbing, just holding down this track bar here and scrubbing over to frame 25, which might get difficult when we add more frames, you could just go ahead and type the frame count right here inside of your current time field. So once we do that, once I type in 25, that's the frame we arrive at. All right, sweet. I'll go ahead and show you some other tools we can access from the track bar a little bit later. So no worries. We'll go ahead and learn how this operates, what cool things we can do to work comfortably, again, as we animate inside of 3ds Max. All right, heading back over to our time configuration panel. Take a look at rescale time. Now we could actually use this to either speed up or slow down our animation. So let's say if we wanted to slow down the entire animation and adjust our keyframes as we do that, we can go ahead and click on Rescale Time, and now we can go ahead and set our new length. So we can set this to, let's say, frame 200 and click OK. When we click OK to set our preferences, take a look at how slow the animation plays back now. How cool is that? So again, this is a great way to go in and adjust your speed. If you find that the animation is playing back way too quickly, you might go ahead and just use that option to scale your timing out a bit, and you'll see how your keyframes are modified to match the range that we've set. All right, sweet. So we'll go ahead and move back to the time configuration panel to go ahead and take a look at this last section here. This is key steps. This is how we're able to cycle through our keys when we're using our key mode toggle. So right now it's just based off of the track bar. What does that mean? Well, if we were to click OK and go ahead and turn on our key mode toggle right here at the left of our current time field, take a look. When we start to use our previous key and next key buttons, we're able to skip to each key. So if you're having difficulty getting to a certain key, you can go ahead and use this. However, if we were to go back to our time configuration panel and turn this off, now we get to choose how we skip between our keys and what keys we arrive at. So here we have selected objects only. If we turn this off and click OK, it's actually going to consider all animated objects in the scene. Now, if we were to go ahead and head back over to our time configuration panel, take a look, we could also choose to skip based off of our current transform. So what does that mean? Well, if we had our move tool active, I'm going to click OK. If we have the move tool active by pressing the W key, let's go ahead and grab our move gizmo. Now, when we go ahead and start cycling through, we're going to cycle through every key where we have movement, not rotation, not scale, but just movement, just translation. And we know that because we can go ahead and take a look at the red markers on our track bar and figure that out. If we see any green markers, that means that it's a rotate key, and blue represents a scale key. So that's basically how that option works. And then if we turn this off, we can go ahead and now get even more specific and say, all right, I'd like to only skip to rotation keys. So I'll go ahead and uncheck position and scale and click OK. And now watch, when we go ahead and let's say skip forward by using next key, now we're going to all of those rotate keys we have in the scene. So if you just want to focus on the rotate keys of the selected object, if we were to go ahead and click on time configuration and choose selected objects only, when we click OK, which chances are you would want to use that just for clarity. Now when we go to the next key option, again we're skipping to all of our rotate keys. Take a look at that, all of the green keys. And you can see that some of our frames have a combination of move keys and rotate keys. So we'll skip to those as well, of course. But that's basically how our time configuration panel works. Again, here's what you would modify to get the exact preferences you would like before you start setting any keyframes. I'd highly recommend that you go ahead and work with this option because it's going to help you save a lot of time from having to redo work when you animate inside of 3ds Max.